Exercise is one of the most powerful tools we have for managing type 1 diabetes. Not just for blood sugar, but also for long-term heart health too. And yet, for many of us, myself for sure, movement can sometimes feel risky, confusing, or overwhelming. My name is Scott Johnson. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for over 45 years, and today, we're going to get some help with that. Before we continue, I need to remind you that we're not providing medical advice. For personalized guidance, we'll always encourage you to talk with your personal healthcare team. I'm really glad to be joined today by Gary Scheiner. Gary is a friend that goes back a long ways. He's an award-winning certified diabetes care and education specialist, the founder of Integrated Diabetes Services, the author of one of my favorite books in diabetes, Think Like a Pancreas, which just released its 4th edition, which is amazing, and also someone who's been living with type 1 diabetes for a very long time. His work has shaped how many of us think about insulin, exercise, and daily life with diabetes. Gary, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. It's nice to see you, old buddy. I think I met you when you were working at Deltec.
That's right. I was going to share that story. Yeah, I think this goes all the way back to 2005, and I can very clearly remember, like it happened just yesterday, I'm sitting at my desk in a very typical cube farm, and our marketing director, her name was Marcella, she comes over and knocks on my cube wall, and I turn around and like, oh my gosh, there's Gary Scheiner in real life. I pulled my book, my Think Like a Pancreas, with all kinds of earmarks and flags, and it was like a total fanboy moment. So yeah, I remember that very clearly.
That was a fanboy moment for me too, because I had some issue with my laptop computer, and everybody at the advisory board was like, "Hey, we got somebody that can help with that. You haven't met Scott Johnson. He'll fix it. He knows what he's doing." We've had a lot of good times together.
That we have. Well, I know that we probably have some listeners who are not as familiar with you and your story as I am. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with type 1 diabetes? When were you diagnosed? And I'm smirking when I say this, but where were you living at the time of diagnosis?
You know this story. I was diagnosed in 1985 in a town just outside of Houston called Sugar Land. You can't make up stuff like that. And I was watching an episode of MASH on TV, and the character with diabetes had all the same symptoms I had. So went to the doctor and got diagnosed. So I was 18 at the time. Usual thing, couldn't go out without running to the bathroom in 2 minutes, drinking all around, lost a lot of weight. After grad school, I got my degree in exercise physiology and ended up working at a Joslin clinic. There weren't a lot of places hiring full-time exercise physiologists in those days.
Yeah.
This was a dream position for me. And I took a job in Philadelphia, worked there for several years, got to train with some of the best in the field in the diabetes space, and then started my own practice. I just saw this, an unmet need, especially in the type 1 space. So,
yeah,
people needing better healthcare guidance in terms of their diabetes care. How to manage it properly, how to live successfully with it, overcoming all the challenges. I mean, every day is a new challenge. So I've built this practice. It's called Integrated Diabetes Services, and it's grown to be an international practice. We do mostly virtual care now for anybody who uses insulin, and type 1s mainly, all over the world. And I've got 9 clinicians on staff now. We all have type 1 diabetes, and some have also kids with type 1. So we're living the dream, and not just like our clients are. We're able to help them make the most of the technologies and the tools at their disposal and manage themselves as effectively as possible.
Was part of what led you into an interest in diabetes just simply kind of wrestling with the challenges of living with diabetes and trying to figure out how to stay active and manage blood sugars at the same time? That's a tricky task.
It is. It's not easy. I think what really inspired me to do this specifically was I was living in Chicago at the time, and I went to a diabetes education program held at a local hospital as an attendee. there was a guy there named Tom Kowalski. He was an exercise physiologist who delivered this presentation about sports and blood sugar control. And I was like, I want that. I want to be him. Yeah. It really hit home, and that kind of set me on my path.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's back up a little bit and talk just at a high level. What is so good about exercise for the human body that makes it such a benefit, even though it can add so many complicated variables in diabetes?
To me, first and foremost, is what it does up here in your mind. I think the emotional comfort it gives us, the emotional pleasure that it provides for us, the ability to relieve ourselves from the stresses of day-to-day life. I've had days recently where it was a tough day at work, just business stuff I didn't want to deal with. And I went and got a really good workout and just felt like a new man after. It made such a difference. Physically, it does make our insulin work better around the clock. If you work out on a regular basis, your insulin works better as well. It's like an amplifier, turning up the amplifier for the insulin to work better. And then, just in terms of keeping yourself healthy, you're approaching 50 years with type 1. I just passed 40 years. And I think my health and the ability to survive this long without complications and be able to function at a high level is because of the workouts I do. And for me, it also compensates for my diet. I do not have a healthy diet. I will just put that right out there. I eat a lot of junk. I eat a lot of healthy food too, but a lot of junk on top of the healthy food. Yeah, it helps compensate to some extent for that. It keeps my heart healthy, lungs, everything. Circulation is good. Cholesterol levels, blood pressure is all really well managed. And I think it's the regular workouts that do that for me.
Why is it important to do different kinds of exercises?
Yeah, you call it cross-training and just a variety of things. Because there's no one exercise you can do that really works every muscle. Swimming comes close, but you got to do a variety of things. And cardio exercise, it's a wonderful thing for heart health, circulation, etc. It helps lower blood sugars immediately. It doesn't do a lot to build muscle, though. I guess I'm a little vain. I want to look good, and as we age, we shed muscle mass. It's a natural thing. And to maintain or build muscle, you got to do resistance training. There's no way around that. And I also think the resistance training helps me perform better in some of the sports that I play. You and I are both avid basketball players. And I know I played better being stronger out there on the court. Being able to hold my own defensively, being able to bounce off of people and recover, when you get some good musculature, that helps. So I like doing a mixture. I'll do cardio some days and resistance other days. I feel like it all puts me in a good position to survive on the court against guys that are a little younger than I am.
Yeah, I feel the same there too. Also, having some muscle mass or maintaining muscle mass helps keep our metabolism going at the same rate, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, think of muscle like interest in a savings account. If you have like 1% interest, your money's not going to accumulate. Muscle burns energy even at rest. So if you have a lot of muscle on your body, you're burning lots of calories even when you're not moving. So the more muscle you have, the more free energy spending takes place. And that's a valuable thing for keeping you lean. It lets me eat some of the junk food and not put weight on because of the added muscle mass. I should say that I can add fat to my body. If muscle weighs, a pound of muscle and a pound of fat weigh the same, clearly the muscle is healthier and looks better.
Yeah, that makes sense. For many of us, even though we know that it's good for us and exercise and activity can make our diabetes management really hard, and it can feel like a lot of pressure there. How do you help people sort of wrap their heads around that duality of it, right? It's so good for us, but can make diabetes so tricky.
That's sort of think like a pancreas concept. You have to make adjustments like your pancreas would make. In a cardio type of workout, your glucose level's going to plummet typically. So you have to make accommodation for that. It's all a matter of balance. You may have to cut down on the insulin that's working at that time or increase the amount of carb that's digesting at that time. But it's certainly manageable. And with some workouts like resistance training or competitive sports, there's a lot of adrenaline production that pushes the blood sugars up. So you have to make adjustments in the other direction for activities like that. And I always stress with my clients and with myself that it's not a perfect science. We can have a set of principles that we apply, adjustments that will work most of the time, but they're not going to work every time. Diabetes, it's an infinite number of variables affecting our glucose levels. And we can manage most of them, but not all of them. So if you're successful most of the time, that's really good. You got to kind of grade this on a curve. You're not going to get it right every time.
And so it sounds like it's important to have some grace with yourself when you follow these principles or you're doing your best and things still don't work out. You don't want to beat yourself up over that, right?
Yeah. Although if I'm playing ball and I get a low, I'm cursing out loud. I'm not happy about that. But I recognize, this hasn't happened for a month or two, so I'm probably doing pretty well.
What do you talk to people about when they're explaining how fears of those low blood sugars kind of get in the way of doing something that we know is so good for us?
I mean, I try to emphasize the low blood sugar is just part of living the diabetes. You're going to have lows. Everyone does who's on insulin and is trying to manage their blood sugars. Lows are going to happen. It's not the sort of thing that should prevent you from doing anything you want to do. If we make the right adjustments, the right accommodations, we should be able to avoid those lows most of the time. And if they do happen, we can catch them at a point where they're not that severe. They're not going to take very long to recover from. My goodness, CGM has just revolutionized our ability to detect lows early and keep them from becoming severe.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you do differently around your CGM? Say maybe having a low blood sugar threshold that's maybe a little bit higher, so you get a few minutes more warning as your blood sugar is going down than you might when you're not exercising. Any tactics like that you use?
I don't, but that's a good idea. I'm going to do that. That's make a lot of sense, even temporarily. Raising that, because the lag time that's present in every CGM is much longer while we're exercising. It's not a 5-minute lag time. It might be a 20 or 30-minute lag time. So we have to think ahead a bit more. So certainly don't just look at your glucose value before you exercise. Look at that trend arrow. Is it rising, falling? How much is it rising or falling by? And you have to project a good half hour out of where it's going to be. And when you're deciding what kind of adjustments you're going to make.
Why is the lag time so different when exercising?
Some of it has to do with blood flow and where blood is being shunted away from. That sensor is sitting right below the skin surface. And when blood flow is nourishing the muscles, it's not getting to the surface quite as much. It's the same reason when we have a low blood sugar that it takes forever for the sensor to show a rise from the food we've eaten. And a lot of people, they just keep eating and eating because it hasn't come up yet. But that's just because the sensor's not detecting the rise in blood sugar yet.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Well, that's a great start here. Let's take a quick break here, and then we can transition into some actual tactics and steps to get people moving more.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm part of the Blue Circle Health team, and I've lived with type 1 diabetes myself for over 24 years. It always means the world when we hear stories from people who've participated in the program. And I have one here from Jane in Florida, who's been living with type 1 diabetes since 2015. I'm going to read it to you. The daily management of coping with T1D was and still is a constant struggle. There are no endocrinologists in the rural area where I live, so I must travel 70 miles each way for my doctor appointments. When I heard about Blue Circle Health, I signed up right away. My endocrinologist is wonderful, but office visits are over in about 15 minutes. Blue Circle Health provided peer support, nutritional advice, and an endocrinology care practitioner who spent up to 1 hour per session reviewing my CGM and insulin pump reports and pinpointing areas requiring insulin adjustments. I am thankful I had the opportunity to work with Blue Circle Health staff. Their care and kindness were invaluable to coping with type 1 diabetes. Thank you, Jane. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Jane. I want to mention another amazing resource on exercising with type 1 diabetes, Ginger Vieira. And listen, this is no advertisement. There's no sponsorship involved. In fact, Ginger doesn't even know I'm doing it. Ginger lives with type 1 diabetes and has shared a ton of information about exercising with T1D. You can find dozens of videos on her YouTube channel, Diabetes Nerd, and she's also written a book on the topic titled Exercise with Type 1 Diabetes: How to Exercise Without Scary Lows or Frustrating Highs. You can learn more about Ginger, her books, and her videos at diabetesnerd.com. All right, welcome back. So, Gary, how do you help people think about exercise and activity as something that supports their health overall rather than just another thing in our diabetes that we have to get right?
I think it's important to try to make it fun. Not a chore, not a task, not a painful thing they have to do. Make it fun. And that starts with knowing the person and asking them, what do you like to do? What do you have access to? What interests you? What might you want to try doing? Are you a social person, or do you prefer to be more isolated by yourself? And that helps design the overall plan and what kind of activities. And in some cases, they're not even, quote unquote, exercise activities that we're doing.
Sure.
It ends up that they'll be doing things around their house or around their yard to get their energy burning. You don't have to be plodding away on a treadmill or in a weight room to get a workout. You can do just ordinary household yard type things and you get a good workout in.
Is there an element of trial and error, both in finding something that you like to do and then also finding how to work your diabetes management so that it doesn't get in the way of doing that?
Yeah, yes to both. There's some trial and error if there's an activity you choose. I mean, let's say you decide, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to use the elliptical just to get started. Mm-hmm. And you find that, after using the elliptical, you're sore, you're bored, whatever. Try something else. There's all kinds of options. And if you can get access to a Y or some health club, they always have classes you can do. There's all kinds of equipment there you can try. That's why it's a good thing to mix it up. Doing the cross training like we talked about earlier, you get a better workout. Your body gets better conditioned that way. You don't get as bored as easily. You're less likely to be sore afterwards also, using different muscles on different days.
When I hear you talk about finding something that's fun, and you mentioned basketball earlier, that's what I really enjoy doing. I have fun, and it's like, and what a blessing that it's such good exercise as well. And any of the other exercise I do, whether that's strength training or extra cardio, it's pretty much only because it helps me feel better on the basketball court. So it's been a fun discovery for me.
And sometimes I will phrase it such that, if somebody wants to play basketball, whatever, I say, okay, everything else you do, you're in training. It's not a workout. You're in training for basketball. Or if they want to be able to walk at 10K, all right, well, we're going to build you're in training from now until then. Psychologically, training for something has purpose. Yeah, people pumped up and excited about what they're doing. Stationary bike is the most boring thing in the world. That I do it because in the spring and summertime, I like to go out on long bike rides. Right. It's me ready for that. I'm in training for my warm weather bike rides.
Uh-huh. I love that mindset. Let's take ourselves to the position of someone who they've not exercised much. They know they should. They're kind of overwhelmed. They don't really know where to start. What are some heart healthy, blood sugar friendly ways for someone to start if they're just new or maybe returning to exercise after a long layoff?
Yeah. Well, again, you can do things around the house. You can create weights. You can have a whole set of weights just made out of cans and bottles from around your house. You start with the little tomato paste cans that weigh a few ounces and work your way up to peas and then soup. And eventually, you've got the gallon jugs that you're using for your weights. But, you can use household objects for that. Just walking is another option. If you have a pet, walk your pet, go another minute each day, build yourself up. But again, think about what would be fun for you. If you're a social person, find someone else to do these things with. Don't isolate yourself if you are a socialite. And if you're the type who prefers to be more isolated, don't be signing up for big group classes. You're going to feel uncomfortable. Do something where you can have some solitude, time to yourself. Perhaps listen to music, watch a TV show while you do it, read, whatever you want to do. But make that your time for you personally and have some fun and you enjoy while you're at it.
I kind of love that idea of the solitude. I kind of sway back and forth between needing or enjoying some accountability partners, but then also having the flexibility to just go when it works best for me.
The time of day that we do our activity or exercise is an important consideration. Because when you look at diabetes from a blood sugar standpoint, it matters what time of day we're doing it. I think the first order of business is to choose a time of day that works for you, that's going to be convenient on a regular basis. A lot of clinics, they discourage people from being active late at night. But if that's when you want to do it, we can adjust. Mm-hmm. Exercise early in the morning if you don't want to have to worry about low blood sugar. Early in the morning, the body does not burn much glucose for fuel, if any. It's mostly fat metabolism at that time of day. So you can get up, do a workout, and not have to worry about your blood sugar taking a nosedive. The same activity, midday, afternoon, evening, you're going to see more of a drop. And also the time of day relative to your last meal or your last insulin dose matters. If you're going to exercise after a meal, you're going to need to lower that meal dose. Unless it's an anaerobic activity like resistance training, you may not need to. But any kind of cardio activity, you're going to need to cut that meal insulin back. But for the workouts that take place pre-meal, late afternoon, late morning, the bolus insulin you took for that previous meal is likely dissipated by that point. So it would be senseless to reduce that. You would just run high for hours. And take a look at your glucose a little beforehand and take some carbohydrate before the activity. That's the best approach for preventing a drop while you're exercising.
What do you recommend in terms of paying attention to the data? Are there times, let's say you're not sure what time works best for you. You don't really know what to expect with your blood sugars. How would you approach that? And let's talk both in terms of someone wearing a CGM, but then also we're going to have many listeners who may not have reliable access to a CGM and they're on just traditional finger stick checking. How might they go about that?
Well, Scott, you and I know from decades of experience, diabetes is a disease of trial and adjustment. Yeah, it's rare that we get it right the first time. I've been in this field for decades, counseling patients, lecturing all over the world. I don't get it right the first time most of the time. It doesn't work. There's a restaurant next door to my office that serves tremendous lo mein. It took me like 7 or 8 tries until I actually figured out what was in that and to be able to dose properly. The same thing happens with exercise. I would start out assuming that activity is going to make your glucose drop. Cut back on the meal insulin beforehand or consume some carbs beforehand and see what happens. So if you find that your blood sugar still drops, you have to make a larger adjustment next time. If you rise, make less of an adjustment next time. And then, different activities, you might need different magnitudes of carbs or insulin adjustment.
What do we need to think about in terms of staying safe when we exercise, both in terms of our blood sugars, but also just avoiding injuries when we exercise? That can really sidetrack someone who's trying to get started.
Hydration is an important starting point. It's easier for people with diabetes to dehydrate than it is for people without diabetes. Because when the glucose is elevated, it dehydrates us that much faster. So we have to be careful about that, staying well hydrated. And just pacing ourselves also. Easing into a workout with a little bit of a warm-up where you gradually build up your intensity. A healthy thing, not just for the circulatory system, but also for avoiding injuries. And cooling down the same way, gradually taking your pace down towards the end. It's helpful. Good footwear is a must. Shoes that fit well, that have good tread on them, so you're not going to slip. And if people out there who might have trouble with balance, using stationary equipment that has handrails or doing things in a seated position is a good idea. You're less likely to experience falls that way. We talked about the blood sugar issues. And one part of the blood sugar we didn't really get into, especially for people with type 1, is very high blood sugar and whether that's problematic for exercise. And in general, it's not. In every instance, you can exercise with high blood sugar. It's not going to be harmful to you. The only exception is if you're high because you don't have any insulin in your body. Okay. In which case, you're likely to also be ketotic. And so that's sort of a way to tell if it's safe to exercise with a high sugar is just by doing a quick ketone check. If you don't have ketones, go for it. If you do have ketones, you got a bigger problem to deal with. You got to get insulin in, you got to rehydrate, et cetera, before you even consider physical activity.
Yeah, that's really good to know because I've always, for a long time, I've heard the old standard formula. If you're above a certain threshold, don't exercise. But it's like a lot of times I am above that threshold, but it's easier said than done to fit that exercise into your target. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend for someone who they tried working out and it just was a disaster? It was a train wreck and they're very discouraged. What would you say to someone who experienced that?
I would say get away from it for a little while, regroup, try to laugh it off, see if you can find some humor in the situation, and then come up with a new plan. Start fresh, forget it ever happened, come up with a new plan, but learn from the experience. Maybe there's something specific about what you were doing. Maybe you were working out at too high an intensity and it was unpleasant and uncomfortable. Exercise should not hurt. If it hurts, you're doing something wrong. You're pushing it too much. It should feel comfortable. It is this thing called the talk test. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it, but please tell me.
Gauge your intensity level during a workout. You should be able to speak in at least short sentences while you're exercising. If you can't do that, you're working out at too high a pace for you in your condition. But you shouldn't be able to sing. If you can sing, you're not working hard enough.
All right. That's a good test. One of the things that I sometimes struggle with is feeling like, okay, I planned this workout. It's got to be perfect. I got to really knock it out of the park. What do you do when your blood sugars just don't cooperate with what you have in your mind or folks that you're counseling and training?
I get frustrated, to be honest. It's when you want to work out and you're set the time aside and you're low, you're crazy high. Yeah, it's frustrating, but it happens. This is not a perfect disease. We're not perfect individuals. Just got to accept it's going to happen sometime. So tomorrow you come back at it with even more enthusiasm than you had before. Days I miss my workouts, I'm not quite the same the next day. I don't feel quite the energy and the focus that I normally have. So I'm eager to back and start it up again.
Yeah, I notice my blood sugars just aren't as easy to manage.
Yeah,
right?
And consistency is so key to that, though. I use that amplifier analogy before.
Right.
All night, someone is dialing an amplifier up and down in terms of how well your insulin is going to work. Sometimes it works 20% better than usual or 30% less effectively. It's always being adjusted, and it's mostly adjusted based on how much physical activity you've had recently. So if you go a few days with no activity, that amps turn way down. The day you're active, it's turning way up, and then it gradually comes down again. So being active on a consistent basis maintains the amp at the same position, and it makes things more predictable.
Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it. It helps, also set the tone for maybe not going on one day of the week and have a killer 3-hour workout, but I can break it down into smaller workouts spaced out throughout the week so that I can keep that insulin sensitivity amplifier dialed up. Well, as we wrap up today, Gary, what are a few things that you would like people with type 1 to remember from this conversation?
And I think physical activity is extremely valuable for so many aspects of our daily quality of life. And, not just blood sugar management, but our mental well-being, our intellectual performance, our physical state now and down the road. It's like a whole drug cabinet full of medicine without a lot of the negative side effects. Anything is doable if you learn how to adjust for it accordingly. And you can work with the folks at Blue Circle, or you can work with a team like mine at Integrated Diabetes Services, and we can help you figure out the right adjustments to make. If you want to go hang gliding at 4 a.m, we'll figure it out. You want to play ice hockey at midnight, we'll figure it out. Whatever you want to do, we'll figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, that's great. Share your website and maybe a social media channel if you know where people can find you online.
Yeah, sure. The website is integrateddiabetes.com. That's an easy one. We have our own podcast that's Think Like a Pancreas, the podcasts.
I'm a fan. I love it.
You can check that out as well. And we have a free newsletter. If you go to our website, you can sign up to get that. It goes out monthly. That's probably the biggest.
That's good. Yeah, we'll get all of those linked in the show notes so people have easy access to them as well. Gary, I want to thank you so much for, I think, one, just being open and honest that even someone like Gary Scheiner still has days where you struggle with your diabetes. I think that is a breath of fresh air and relief to many of us out here who think like, man, you must have it figured out. You know everything. So thank you for being open and honest about your struggles there too.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to spend time with you, Scott. We don't get together nearly often enough.
I agree with that. Well, thank you so much for taking time with me. I really appreciate it. And we'll have you back on soon.
You'd love to.
If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll consider bringing some of the lessons learned into your next workout session. And be sure to tune in to our next episode where we're going to be talking with a dear friend about how finding community can help with your diabetes management. I hope you'll join us. Until then, keep living well with T1D.